Alrighty. Good morning, everybody. Good evening, good afternoon, good night, whatever your time frame may be. I'm not going to tell you how many times I've had to retry this or restart this because of outside disturbances, what have you. But okay, you're here for 102 of composting. Where can I go with this? Those of you that are following along, just feel free to go back and look in 101, and you'll see the lack of comments. So, like I told Elegant Homestead yesterday, I'll wing it because nobody gave me some guidelines as to what they actually wanted. Now, understand the basis for which I'm going to refer to when I say in your build, in your compost build. We're going to be talking about a 4x4 circle, square, enclosed base, so that worms can't get to a type of structure. Okay, because we're not talking about vermicomposting. Okay, or vermicoat, whatever. We're not talking about using worms. Those of you that are going to leave the bottom open and allow the worms in, you're going to be eliminating smell. For some of you, that's important. You're going to be monitoring things a little bit closer with temperature gauges. Okay, because if you don't have the worms, you're not going to pick up the smell. When you pick up the smell from a compost pile, you waited too long. You need to turn it immediately. You should never smell the decay or the ammonia. That's when things are a little too long. You've got to get that thing flipped over and moisturized. Okay, you got to cover your compost. You don't want rainwater getting to it; it throws everything off. You can compost in 15, 20 days if you keep your temperatures right. Now, some of you aren't going to pay attention to your temperatures, and yeah, things are going to break down organically and slowly, and they're going to do their thing, what have you. If you're not covering it and you're not driving the temperatures higher, do you know if you're killing off the bad stuff? Weed seeds, for example. Weed seeds, unless they're dehydrated, completely dehydrated and destroyed, you've got to be 131 degrees or higher to destroy weed seed in your compost. So think about your compost. It's not an intensive labor thing until you're turning it. Otherwise, it's just set it and forget it. Watch your moisture content, watch your temperature. Over 150, 253 degrees, bad, bad, bad. Throw it away. You just destroyed it because you waited too long. So you do kind of have to monitor it. Because especially if it's out in the sunlight, out where things are happening and what have you, your temperatures are going to be higher. You've got to pay closer attention to it. If it gets too dry, it can catch on fire. You don't want that either. So you've got to have a moisture content to it. 50% moisture content throughout the entire thing. I'll get you a video, okay? One that I would recommend, one that would be the way I would do it. And I follow Dr. Ingram's system, so just I'll give you a link below. But for lack of anything else, like I said, in 101, nobody had any questions. Just keep talking, Ron. Well, yeah. I'm Ron. I'm the Green Wizard. I can talk about this kind of stuff all day long, hours and hours and hours. But we're just going to deal with compost, not vermiculture, no worms. We're just talking about a pile. Think about it like lasagna, 4x4 pile, uh, 4 foot across, 4 foot high. Yes, it shrinks in time. Yes, this happens. Yes, that happens. All of that aside, you want to do it like lasagna in layers. For as much as you have, add a little more. As much as you have, and divide it up and keep spraying it, keep moisturizing it. Um, take your individual pieces if you have them in individual pieces. Uh, wood chips, manure, hay, whatever materials you're using, get them saturated, soak them down really, really good. Um, even 3 days ahead of time, get started, get them good and wet. Even soak them in buckets for that matter, and just super, super wet. Don't mix them early in piles. You want them separated from each other because you don't want to get this thing triggered and get it started. Um, I mean, obviously, you don't build a pile and then go on vacation and think it's going to be okay. You're going to have to pay attention. It's just one of those things. But beneficials, and I'll explain as I'm going through this. But once a year to maybe once every 3 years, and you don't need any amendments in your yard, in your soil. All that stuff is there. It is. It's just no longer bioavailable to your plants. See, that's how they got us here. They got us on this NPK system. And now they're pushing the fungicides and the pesticides and what have you. And that's like dropping a nuclear bomb on the food web from your neighbor using chemicals in their yard can have direct adverse effect on your yard and your garden. If your garden, even boxed garden, box it in a little raised bed, whatever, huge garden is right along your property line, and your neighbor goes through and puts down a fungicide, you just killed the food web. It spreads that fast. They did a test. Dr. Ingram, there's a place out in Utah, I believe, um, where there's plant life coming down through the hills and what have you, and there's a lot of roots showing coming down from these trees, and other vegetative life. It's a really neat place where they go and do these tests. And what they decided they were going to do was prove how quickly things move. And we're talking 50 feet, 60 feet down into the cave. And then they go back a ways, and then there's the roots, what have you. And the moisture content's okay enough, and the darkness is there. The conditions are right that the roots grow right through this cave. So you have access to the roots. So they had a student stay behind in the cave, and the rest of them went up, and they took food coloring, food dye, water, and they injected it into the roots and into the plant. And from there, they were supposed to go to lunch or what have you and wait for the results, wait for the dye to get down through the roots, some 50 feet, what have you, to be ejected or whatever the plant was going to do with it as it came through the system. They didn't get to lunch. 50 feet, 90 seconds. That's how fast that dye ran through those trees with the tree trying to get rid of the dye. And it showed up in surrounding plants. 90 seconds. Think about how big your yard is. Your next door neighbor's trees 2 houses away, if they're over there throwing down pesticides and what have you, and those roots are reaching your yard, that's how dangerous this synthetic fertilizer stuff is. By inoculating your entire yard, that's the importance of this, with ½ inch to an inch of compost once a year, every 3 years, or give or take, and you can read your yard will tell you. You're giving your yard the ability, scientifically. There's a bunch of fields that come with this. I'll rattle them off here in a second, because all of this is from memory. Since nobody gave me guidelines as to what you want, what they wanted to understand, so I took notes. I talked to other YouTubers, what have you. I'm getting a ton of emails. Where's 102? Where's, you said you were going to do this, but nobody left a comment behind saying what they wanted to hear. So I'm just going to pour out the scientific from memory. We're just going to run with it. I took notes, so I've got guidelines as to where I want to go with this. But when you introduce this microbial world that you're going to grow with compost from your region, yours is going to be different than mine. Mine is going to be different from my neighbors. The conditions are slightly different everywhere you go. What you put in the compost is going to be different everywhere you go. Okay? Understand that. So, where this is a wide sweeping subject, everybody's compost, everybody's inoculum, everybody's treatment for their yard, their garden, their what have you is going to be slightly different. But understand, the end results are exactly the same. Now I'll rattle off that list of all the different fields that are affected by this same stuff. Now, what we're talking about here is we're building a world of items all together that are going to give us the fungicides, the protozoas, the nematodes, the microarthropods, okay, and the mycorrhizal fungi. You're building your own. These are all the things in the food web. Now, yeah, there's beneficials and negatives and da-da-da-da-da. And the higher the temperatures go or the lower the temperatures go, give us the bad ones. The reason you have to keep turning the pile is because you're going to get the bad ones if it becomes anaerobic and or non-oxygenated, just like your soil is. Your soil's anaerobic because it's too compressed. It's become clay. It's a solid block of nothingness. There's no dead organic matter or living organic matter left in it. This is the tool that you would use to break that up, spread that apart, and give it all the beneficials. So between 130 to kill off everything, 150 to 160 to give you all the beneficials. Anything over 160, toxic. Anything under 150, potentially toxic, going into the anaerobic. Not enough moisture, not enough air. All of these things play into composting. I'll give you the video. It's in the link below. You can see it. It's under a half hour. You'll see everything. You'll see it built. You'll get the explanation. You'll get some shortcuts, some tweaks. It's in the video. Understand, all of this knowledge affects a bunch of different fields where you're talking about geology, botany, agronomy, agriculture, agricultural economics, two different fields, plant pathology, biology, agricultural engineering, entomology, environmental science, chemistry, forestry, biochemistry, geography, physics, even ecology. All of those fields, all of those start with the food web. Start at the basic building blocks of all of this. Okay? These things are required in your soil, on your plant's roots, to give you all of the correct stuff, all of the minerals, all of the vitamins, all of the nutrients that your plant needs. Your plant doesn't have a stomach. It can't digest this stuff. So what ends up happening is this stuff goes in, inoculates the soil, building the glues, aerating everything, protecting the roots from the bad guys in the anaerobic soil. Aerobic doesn't allow the bad guys in. Anaerobic is teeming with it. As it eliminates air, as it eliminates moisture, becomes clay. Okay? So by inoculating, you're going the opposite direction. And yes, you can take your roots and you can soak them in this and then plant it and get the same results. This protects you from disease. So anyone that says, well, we're going to have to put a fungicide down, they're killing the they're killing the food web. They're going to make it anaerobic. You can use acids to burn the soils, but that's still not going to fix the actual problem. You're going to slow the problem down, but you're not going to fix the problem. That's how important composting is. Yes, you can do it on a small scale. How much property do you have? Because your mycorrhizal fungi and some of these others. Now, some of them are bad for plants. Just depends on the soil conditions and what the plant needs. But the plant will naturally not put off the foods that feed the hyphae, that feed some of these things. So they'll die off, they'll back off, they'll go away. Other things are going to come in from the food web and eat them. So it's a wash. Okay, one will take care of the other, which takes care of the other. It takes one to become the other, but to become that's the food web. We are sitting at it at the top of the food chain. I've tried to explain this before. We're top of the food chain. You eliminate the food web, and we all get sick at the top of the chain and or die. It's that important. These are shortcuts. Okay, these are shortcuts. These are speeding things up. That's what's in my book. My book is old knowledge. My book goes way back. You've got to understand the NPK system, in a sense, started when, I don't know, you could see everything under a microscope. I'm sorry, this science goes back even further than that. This nature's way goes way back. We've had agricultural societies on this planet for many years, many thousands of years. But guys like Dukovich, Russian-born, 1846, died in 1903. He's credited with being the father of soil science. I'm sorry, the first agrarian society that planted seeds to build farms, to not have their society in constant motion and constantly roaming and hunter-gatherers. They were the first. But okay, we'll just go with what the science books say, because we weren't going to learn for history. That's where we end up with the NPK system, right? That's how important this is. It really is. When 50% of every plant out there puts its energy, 50% of its energy directly into the roots, and there we are putting down pesticides, fungicides, and what have you, wiping out these roots. We're allowing anaerobic conditions to get into our yards and get into our soils and giving us what? 2-3 inches of something like topsoil. That's where all the roots are for our grass. There's a scientific study done on grass seeds, and this guy was testing his fields, what have you, and he's all organic and what have you. But he put this seed down in this area for whatever, doesn't matter. 3 months. 3 months. They did a soil sample for this particular type of grass, and they put this sleeve down in the ground around this particular grass plant, and they pulled it out and they washed it all off and what have you. And in 3 months, that grass had gone 3 feet deep. Huge bundle of roots, and they were keeping the grass cut at 2 inches. That's what your yard should be like, except for the anaerobics. Now, whether it's your fault using chemicals or not is immaterial. Could be your neighbor. Doesn't matter. You can fix it. That's what composting does. You can amp up a compost pile by adding some tips and tricks out of here. You can even cause composting, okay, in your soils by, I'm just forgetting it, Howie. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I always forget the soil pathway system, which is causing all of this breakdown to happen in the ground, because the compost pile is in the ground, happening at a slower pace, at Mother Nature's organic pace, and all of the organic life doing its thing to break down everything that Howie's putting in the soil. Get the list. Ask him for it. He'll tell you where to get it. It's on his website, I believe. You can just order it. Tell you exactly how to soil pathway garden. Incredible system. But it's the same thing. He's done his entire food forest this way, and the inoculum is everywhere throughout his soil, battling off the bad, getting rid of the anaerobic conditions, which is where the bad microbial life live, where the inability of the roots to get a hold of the minerals that it needs, that's those conditions. When you've got diseases coming in, you've got anaerobics somewhere that the roots are coming in contact with. They're not being able to get the minerals. They're not being able to get the vitamins. They're not being able to get the supplements, because the beginning of the food web, I'll rattle off the list again, the fungicides and well, you've heard me say it too many times already. You got to understand, the plant's exudates, what oozes out of the plant and comes through to feed all of the good microbial life that we're talking about. It adjusts to each one that it needs. So if it needs calcium, it's going to call on and exude a certain amount of signs and signals. This is what I need. And that's going to get brought back from far, far away. Remember me telling you the roots from the tree in the cave? When they injected a dye into the roots of this tree on this test site, 50 feet below is a cave where the roots actually come through. 90 seconds for that dye from the point of injection, 50 feet down. 90 seconds is all it took for that dye to get through those roots being ejected. That's how fast those chemical signals get sent. When a plant needs something, it puts out the signal right now, and it travels very, very quickly. Very, very quickly across the food web, telling the food web what to bring back in exchange for the exudates, the sugars and the proteins and the carbohydrates and the what have you. The plants exude the food that the food web, the beginning of the food web, need. That's the exchange. When you have nothing but weeds, you have nothing there feeding. You have aerobic conditions. Okay, non-aerobic conditions. You're causing your own problems. So for some of you that are sitting there going, well, the weeds are fine, da, 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 they're going to break this all up. And yeah, they've been doing such a wonderful job up till now, right? That's why you never get flooding in your yard, right? Soil conditions are what they are, depending on where you live. You can have up to 16 miles of potential topsoil, yeah, before you hit rock bed, depending on where you live. I've got about 50 feet here. I'm going for all 50 feet. I want nothing but topsoil for 50 feet down. I want absolute water storage. I don't want to ever have to water again. I don't need to. Tap water is terrible for your garden. Absolutely terrible. Now, if you could run it through a compost pile, you'd have great water. There's certain things that happen in some of those acids that actually remove the chlorine and remove some of the toxins right out of the water and give you pure water at the end of it. Check the video. Check the video that I linked below. They're talking about it. They're teaching you how to do this stuff. Okay. I'm not telling you anything you don't potentially already know or can't find out. But you got to understand, when you start talking about these anaerobic conditions and what have you, you're talking about pH levels being caused in your soil. Okay. You want your 6.5, 7s pH. None of that matters in an anaerobic system. When the air is in there, the acidic pH levels neutralize. Yeah, you can add stuff to it. But when you're composting and you're utilizing all of that, you don't need to balance anything. You don't even need to look at that. You need to leave your organic matter alone. That's why I say, after you're done harvesting, just clip the plant off, leave the roots alone. Everything is where it needs to be. Just cover your soils. I mean, when you're talking covered soils on a 100-degree day, your soils could be higher than that. I mean, how much hotter does it get inside your car when the windows are up on a 100-degree day? That's what's going on uncovered soil. But you cover the soil, and I don't care. Wood chips, undyed. Now, we're talking fresh wood chips, not doctored. Leaves, hay, which I love, alfalfa hay, absolutely. You're talking a 30-degree difference on contact. Seeds won't germinate at 100, 105. Keep that in mind. They won't germinate on covered soil. But you give it 80-degree temperatures, moist, and seeds germinate like crazy. They go absolutely bonkers. That's what we're talking about. When your soils are inoculated and you're covering it and keeping it protected and giving it that nice blanket, okay, all moisture that comes in stays in and stores deep, very, very deep, right down to your rock bed. That's a lot of place to put a lot of water. Wait, that would stop flooding, wouldn't it? That's how bad the NPK system has become. That's what we've caused ourselves. If you want to clean out your tap water, you just run it through humic acid. You're like, what? Well, you could get humic acid. You can also get it right out of your compost pile. So you want clean water, you want safe water, you want stuff that you can put on your garden without, having to collect rainwater or whatever. You just need some humic acid right out of the compost pile. Apply that to your tap water. What it does is it seizes the molecules, the chlorines, the fluorines, the fluorides, and what have you. It seizes them. It makes them no longer bioavailable. Okay. and it doesn't get into the plants that way. So if you have no choice and you can't leave your water sit out for days on end for fear of mosquitoes or this, that, or the other, or them spraying, or and letting things just naturally oxygenate off with a little bubbler in your water and what have you to just keep things rolling and let the chlorine and everything just evaporate off, just a little bit of humic acid, and you've got water. Safe water to put on your plants. I don't know that I would drink that much acid, but there's ways. Okay, nature has ways of filtering water out to make it clean. Humic acid just happens to be one that's really, really good for immediate make tap water safe for my plants. But you shouldn't need to water. As you aerate, as the glues from all of the food web open things up and spread soil out and leave pockets and leave aeration, there's places for the water to go. Keep that in mind. That's what we're after. That's the point we're after. We're trying to inoculate our plants. That's what we're doing. We're giving it conditions of balanced pH with all of the right microbial life for your plants to thrive on what's available in the soil. The plant states what it needs. These things go out and get it. Other life forms bring it back. Boom, 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 boom. Everything eats everything else. It now becomes available to the plants. And you have this, a lot of people go, well, okay, how long is this going to take? It takes 15, 20, 21 days to get yourself compost. From that point, once applied, 2-3 days, and you're expanding instantaneously. It's that quick. This microbial life goes fast and spreads out really fast and can instantly start turning people's yards and gardens around everywhere it can reach. This is why this is one of those things that it's like once a year to every 3 years after you have started this process to just increase the inoculant, amp things up. Once you do this, you don't need to add anything to your soil ever. That's how good composting is. So you ask, well, how should I? It's not how should I, it's your understanding. That's how good composting is. When you apply this to the soil at anywhere from an inch to a 1-inch layer in your garden beds, in your grass, around your trees, everywhere, you're letting that microbial life loose, and that stuff spreads extremely fast. It has been measured at up to a mile in one life form, 1 tablespoon, a mile. And you're putting that stuff immediately bioavailable and active in your yard, in your garden, and it protects your plants. It keeps the bad stuff away. It balances the pH levels and gives you the good stuff. It gets rid of the anaerobic conditions and reverses things. It pushes things away you don't want, makes your yard healthy again, and gives you the best of the best right out of your garden. Kind of leaving it hang there to let you think on that for a second, because yeah, you don't need additions. If you're composting and you're composting correctly, you don't need additions. You add additions to amp up, add shortcuts. I sweeten my yard to amp up the food web and its activities. If you know, or you want to test to see how good your food web is working in your yard, don't bag your grass and your grass clippings. And check down near the crown, down near the brown part, down above the soil, and check and see how thick your thatch layer is. You shouldn't be able to find much more than maybe a ½ inch sitting down there. And even though you're not gathering your grass clippings, they're disappearing in 30 days. That's an active food web. That's what you want. That works in the garden too, by the way. 30 days. Anything dead laying on the ground is absorbed, eaten, destroyed, taken away. And that's why a lot of people want to go to the wood chip method. As you please. I would rather keep bringing in new biomass. Hay, super simple, super, super simple. Yes, the woody microbial life is healthier and stronger. Okay. That's why I don't argue the point of using fresh wood chips and sawdust in your mix when you're covering your garden bed, in between the walking rows and what have you. That's what we're talking about. When you blanket in the winter, these things are okay. The microbial life will be feeding on it, unless it gets too cold, obviously. But that's why I also say blanket and make it nice and thick, 3-4 inches of cover crop, cover stuff over top of your garden in the winter when you've got nothing but snow and ice. Doesn't mean you can't have stuff growing there. My garlic loves those conditions. So don't dismiss. That microbial life is still working down there, deep in the soil. Deep. Okay, what's deep? 2-3 inches? And my garlic's going strong, hardcore, as those roots expand down into the soil, playing with and teaming with life and doing its thing. You can compost in your soil or compost pile. There's some other shortcuts. There's plenty of them. There's many ways to come at this. Think of the list of fields that I talked about. There's plenty of different ways to come at this, but without the food web, without composting, you're going to have to utilize a lot of these shortcuts from the Green Wizard's Guide. Get your hands on one. It's important. There's a lot of shortcuts in there. Now, I know a lot of you are going to be leaning towards the protozoas, the nematodes, the arthropods. Okay. Look, it's a digestive system. One feeds the next, feeds the next. Not all nematodes are bad. If you want to get in there with a microscope and look for the one that has the mouth and then figure out an exact way to get rid of that particular one, good luck. Okay. Not all nematodes are bad. There are good ones. Arthropods, same difference. Okay. The protozoas, same difference. There's good and there's bad. It just depends on the soil conditions. Anaerobic, aerated, compost rich, what have you. These things are turning this mass, this bioavailable mass, whether it be old roots, whether it be minerals, whether it be vitamins. These are the ones exuding or trailing behind or regurgitating these things that are now plant available. One protects the plant, part of the food web. These three elements come in and ingest those and make things available directly for the plant roots to ingest. And then other things come in and eat those three things: the protozoas, the nematodes, the arthropods. Nature has a balance. It keeps everything in check. You only get so much of so much of so much. So just because you have birds in there ripping out the worms and way, you may have an abundance. Nature is trying to level that off. Okay. So yeah, 102 of composting. Is it important? Absolutely. Absolutely. Are there ways to shortcut around it? Well, yeah, absolutely. You can order the inoculum in, but you don't know where it's coming from. Are you going to test it and see if it's actually got any active teeming life in it? You got a microscope? I don't. I don't have $300 to drop on a microscope. It's easier for me to grow my own and know that everything that I'm putting into that compost pile, everything that's being absorbed, all the temperatures are right, all the conditions are right, the moisture context is right. All my conditions are doing exactly what they're supposed to do. I can compost in the soil. Howie, food forest permaculture, doing exactly the same thing in the soil. It all works. It does. Which particular way you want to go, that's entirely up to you. It is. I can feed you more information. There's plenty. There's plenty. Watching your bacterial levels and watching the things that are going on. If you want to sit there with a microscope every day and do a little of this, a little of that, a little of this, a little of that, and you want to egg that thing on for 21 days, more power to you. I can't sit on a couch that long and then get up, walk over, and do my microscopic testing. I don't have that kind of time. There's so many other beneficial things I could be doing for my soils to help things out. Okay. Now, yeah, a lot of you are going to sit back and say, well, wait a minute. Now, my plants are doing good and my plants are healthy on the NPK system and this, that, and the other. Da, 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 da. Okay. How much water retention does your soil have? If you add this, you don't need to add nitrogen, phosphorus, phosphates to your soils. Even worrying about what those levels are becomes immaterial, goes away. Because your plant tells the food web what it needs. And the food web goes out and brings it back. Or it runs a trail down that the roots follow until it comes in contact with what it's looking for. So chasing your pH levels is kind of pointless when that can be neutralized by doing this. Worrying about whether the phosphorus is right, the nitrogen is right, the nitrogen fixtures are right, the carbon content is right. When you compost inoculate, you don't need to worry about any of that. It all goes away. You have to understand, though, you've got to treat your entire yard because those things reach a good long ways to get what they need, to find moisture, to find this, to find that, to find its conditions that it needs to bring back in exchange for the exudates coming from the plants to feed itself. Everything is helping everything else. It's the way nature works. We don't work that way. Neighbors don't help neighbors anymore. And that's why society's coming apart at the seams. Nobody just helps anybody. Again, a totally different structure. But if you look at nature and you go nature's way, everything is helping everything else. One step up, and then a step up, then a step up, then a step up, then a step up, until you get to the top of the food chain, which is us. So when you're chasing the NPK system, you're worried about your nitrogens, your phosphorus, and your carbons, and your carbon fixtures, and your nitrogen fixtures, and you're eliminating the food web because you're going to put a substance down that's going to zap the food web in that spot, and it's going to affect your entire yard. You could be doing things next to your house that are killing your tree at the end of your property half a mile away because the roots could be there. That's how toxic this NPK system is. When you throw things out of whack, the system backs off. It protects itself. It's like, I don't know, look at an octopus. When you grab a hold of a tentacle of an octopus with something sharp or what have you, it immediately pulls itself back. That's what the food web does. In a sense, you could think about your neighbors being helpful by using this NPK system because they're forcing everything back into your yard. But if this stuff's not in your yard and not available in your yard, where's it going to reach to get what it needs? How deep's your soil? All of these things are that important. All of these things can be corrected with composting. All of these things can be corrected with the Green Wizard's Guide. It is that important. It does go that far. And I've covered the temperatures. I've covered that. Covered that. I think I've just about covered everything. Yeah. So you want your thermal composting. That's the direction I do. Do I do composting in soil? Absolutely. There's plenty of ways to do many, many different things to get these results. But as far as class 102 of composting, we're talking thermal compost, no worms. Now, understand, you can use worms as an indicator. So if you're not going to seal off the bottom or put a tarp down or do whatever, or build it on a cement pile or some, whatever, worms will tell you when it gets too hot. So if your worms are exiting and you see them leaving your compost pile, it's too hot. Get in there, open it up, flip it over, add moisture, clean that pile up, cool that thing off. Because like I said, if you get up over 160, 161 to 63 and higher, you're bringing in all the bad forms of fungus, fungicides, what have you. You can't use that pile. If you see a gray ash line anywhere throughout that pile as you're flipping things over, it got too hot, it's now toxic, throw the whole thing away. You have to watch it that close. You don't want water in there, so you don't want rainwater in there. You want it covered. You might even just do this in the shade and let it naturally do its thing. Starting to give you some ideas, starting to give you directions, ways to go. Yes, you can do this in a bucket with a little bit of drainage holes right on your porch and take care of your plants. You can order different things in. It's all in the shortcuts you want to do. It's your garden, in your growing zone, in your conditions, how you want to take care of things. My way isn't necessarily the right way in Texas or in Florida when it comes to composting, because the worlds are totally different worlds. If I were to take my compost inoculums to Florida and apply them to a guy's garden in Florida, they won't survive. The conditions are incorrect for that type of bacterial life to be growing, that type of fungal life to be growing. But what is growing down there is specific to their zone. So this does get that specific. This does get that precise. And yeah, a lot of things will break down in compost. So don't limit yourself as to how you're going to do this. Well, at this point, I would tell you, go to my PayPal account, send me some money so I can get some more coffee. But Bobby already took care of that for you guys, because nobody else pays attention or ever gets to the end of my videos, I'm assuming. If you do, give me a thumbs up. I'll know you were here. I'll know you listened to all of it, because I'm getting very limited numbers of thumbs up. We might do a thing one day and just do thumbs down. We'll see. But this is where we're headed, guys. This is what I need to know. What do you want next? Don't email me. Leave comments below so we can all get an opinion in. I need to know where you want to go with this next. Vermicompost or this or mushrooms and yes, mushrooms are very important. If you've got mushrooms popping up in your grass, you're doing it right. Okay? You're sitting back scratching your head going, what? Yeah, if you've got mushrooms popping up in your garden, in your grass overnight, you're doing it right. Because the fungicide world, the fungi are growing, teeming, and thriving. So if you don't see mushrooms, you need help. You need the guide. Okay? That's where we're headed with this. So you guys let me know in the comments below. Did I not cover enough information? Do you need something else? Do I do a 103 on compost, or do we head in a different direction? Comment below. Let me know what you want to do. And yeah, all of your gardening friends need to see these. Hell, they all need this book. It's up to you. I'll give you any information you want. How far do you want me to take the science? How hard do you want me to scratch my head to get that information to pop back up, trigger a memory, and give you the information that you're asking for? You let me know. I'm the Green Wizard, everybody. We'll catch you on another stream. You know where to find me. Have a great day. We'll see you later.